Welcome to PAMA's Curators in Conversation, where we aim to illuminate the thinking behind the curatorial thesis of a given exhibition. I'm Sharona Adamowicz-Clemens, curator of art and the host of this program. And today's guest is Jacqueline Meloche, curator of the exhibition Power Play, Hockey in Contemporary Art. I do want to speak about this one other section, the masks, actually. So there is another artist in the show, Barry Jones, and he contributed 2 works to the exhibition as part of a series in which he represents himself in various recognizable tourist sites wearing a hockey sweater. I would say it's a hockey sweater, right? That's how you would describe it, yeah. And he also has a goalie mask, and he took one in 1974 in a mortuary temple in Egypt, and then a few years later at Lake Louise in Banff. So in these works, Jones really brings into view the idea of identity of a place or of a national place and how it's tied to its symbols. And this is something you can especially see in his the photograph that he took in Egypt, where he's wearing these Canadian, the Canadian attire, the goalie mask, the sweater, and he is set against this ancient landscape with ancient Egyptian imagery. Anyways, tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so Barry Jones is a Vancouver-based artist. He lived in Windsor a few decades ago and did teach at the University of Windsor, but has been in Vancouver for quite some time. And these 2 works are from the Art Gallery of Windsor's permanent collection. And they provided a really opportunity to have a dialogue with another object that came from the Hockey Hall of Fame, which was a mask, an original mask worn by Jacques, who was the first goalie in the National Hockey League, the NHL, to wear a hockey mask, and really for protective reasons. He was hit in the face in a game in New York at Madison Square Garden, and he was stitched up on site, and he wore a mask in the first for the first time. And so we start to see that particular object is a very early reference point to the function and the aesthetics of the mask. And if we fast forward into Barry Jones's work, and again, in keeping with the thesis of the exhibition of questioning the narratives that are embedded within hockey, certainly one main narrative is that of Canadian identity, and that there is a strong, although yes, hockey is not Canada's national sport, it is often associated as lacrosse is the national sport, but hockey is often associated as, and it's become such a powerful promotional material. If we think of Hockey Night in Canada, and certainly the role that Don Cherry played in really bringing the game into the popular culture of Canada. And so Barry Jones's works, these 2 works where they are in a way self-portraits. It is his body wearing the hockey jersey and the mask, standing in front of very iconic, highly touristic landmarks. So Lake Louise and Hatshepsut's tomb in Egypt. And so what he's providing us is a dialogue between the hockey player and national iconography, and what that conversation, how the national iconography of the landscape, how does that inform the body in this work? And further problematic is the hockey gear that he is wearing. And so it provided a really important narrative for the hockey mask that then we paired with a Kent Monkman work, one of one of his patches from a series, the Mischief patch, where he Monkman embroidered over top makeup to really transform the logo of the Chicago Blackhawks, which is that of the profile of an Indigenous chief, into his own alter ego of Mischief Eagle Testicle, to again further question the iconography that hockey lends itself as it relates to Canadian identity.
Yeah, and it's actually interesting that you're speaking about iconography. And if you'll entertain one of my thoughts about something here for a second. So I have to share with you a thought that I had, especially, in relations to Barry Jones. So, the mask that he put on, it's one of those, maybe the original, is it the original prototypes from the early days, right? So
Yeah.
it does conceal his identity quite a bit, but I mean his facial expression, what he looks like. But to me, and I don't know if you felt the same way, it alludes a little bit to the popular horror movies of Friday the 13th,
Yeah.
or even a little bit the crime thriller Hannibal. So you've got these leading psychopathic evil characters who are wearing similar masks. Now, I know that Jones created the work. It was before Friday the 13th. So one of the images was in 1974. The first movie in the installment in the series came out in 1980. I tried to do some research on this. So I think it was 1980, but obviously you could not predict that we would draw these parallels between the mask and serial killers. But today it's almost nearly impossible not to see the connection. So I guess what I'm trying to get at is, speaking of the power of symbols and how they impact our decoding of images, what we see in popular culture really has a lasting effect. So what do you think are some of the embedded symbols of hockey that might be having an adverse or even positive impact on society? I know it's kind of a loaded question, but
Within the exhibition or outside?
maybe just in general. And maybe things
General?
that we don't normally even think about, but they are very, they're loaded. There's meaning behind it. I mean, you talked about masculinity as it relates to hockey, and maybe, the heavy padding that, we associate with, larger, bigger men, and that carries the idea of strength, and that could be a good thing, a negative thing. But do you see any other symbols perhaps that, could send a positive meaning, or maybe, they're so negative but we don't see them?
Well, I think the landscape of hockey right now, like in many sports, is really changing. Their conversations as they relate to race, as they relate to gender, as they relate to homophobia, are starting to be had. These conversations are becoming increasingly had openly, if I can say so. So, for example, not that long ago, a female played in net during an NHL practice. So I believe, don't quote me on this, I don't have my statistics in front of me, but I believe it was the Pittsburgh Penguins, I think. Manon was her first name. Her last name escapes me right now, but she did play during an exhibition game as a goaltender. And Haley Wickenheiser certainly has brought attention to professional female hockey players. So we're starting, the landscape in sports is changing right now every day. And it's important, it's necessary, and it's about time. The one unique, to sort of go back to this Friday the 13th aesthetic that you were speaking to, I think what's really interesting with the original masks that we know of from horror films, or from Jacques Plante, or as in Barry Jones's work, what they do is so they're not the caged masks that you see the body through, or
Right.
the acrylic clear glass panel. They are solid masks that have holes for eyes, mouth, nose. And so they provide anonymity. And that's really interesting, where today the opposite is happening. Goalie mask art is alive, is real. Artists are being called upon to decorate, to symbolize the player, the goalie who is underneath that mask. And so the opposite is happening. We want to not be anonymous anymore on the ice. And so whether it be through social justice or the decorative addition on a goalie mask, bodies are becoming their own bodies. And that's what's really, I think, one of the more important takeaways that we can take from perhaps hockey right now.
And I think it's good to end on a more positive note. So I'm going to say this show is definitely fascinating. It uses hockey in the language of sports. I think that a good segment of society understands, but in a way that we can explore a variety of, important topics and current issues that we might otherwise just not notice. So I think really what you're doing here is you're using hockey as an entry point into a number of various serious subject matter. And I hope people really do take it seriously. Thank you, Jacqueline, for the wonderful exhibition and for your time here today.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure speaking.
This exhibition is currently on display and will be running until the 5th of June. In the meantime, the exhibition is available for viewing through our virtual 360-degree tour, which you can find on the PAMA website, peelregion.ca/PAMA.